Hey, Jim here as well with Josh. Well, people are talking about this being the end of the world, Josh. What do you think? We're in the middle of this coronavirus pandemic. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's scary. I mean, hey, we're doing our part though, right? So that's why it might
We
sound
are.
a
We're at
little,
home.
a little different to people. I'm actually in the studio, and Jim's at his house.
Yep.
So
Socially distancing ourselves.
yeah,
So,
yeah. So, but yeah, man, it
and
is scary.
talking about the social distancing champion of the world. That's our topic.
So, what do you got going on for us today?
Hey, we've got another interview with one of my favorite Bigfoot guys, and we interviewed Jason last year. Do you remember when we talked to Jason?
Oh yeah, Jason's a good friend of the show.
He is a good friend of the show, so he's got some time because he's at home as well, like many of us, and so he was willing to come on, and he's just written a book called Harry's, Hairys, and it's kind of the ongoing story of his experiences with Sasquatch. And I've been reading the book, so I thought today'd be a great opportunity to call him and ask him a few questions from some of the things I've read. And he said, great, he'd be up for it.
All right, I can't wait to hear this phone call.
So let's get him on the line and see what Jason has to say.
All righty.
Your call will be answered in the order it was received.
Hey, so I'm here with someone we've interviewed in the past. We interviewed Jason Frank last year in our first season, and Jason has come out with a book that called The Harrys that's just been published, and we wanted to talk with Jason about some things that he's written in the book that maybe shed some additional light on some of the things we talked about last year. So are you there, Jason?
I'm here. It's good to hear from everybody. I hope everybody's staying safe and healthy with all this stuff.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. Hey, I got a bizarre, off-the-topic question, but with this whole thing about coronavirus, I don't know if you've wondered about this, but I wonder if Sasquatch can catch coronavirus. I'm asking that seriously.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I think I've always been a big proponent of the theory that they were affected by smallpox, just like the Native Americans were. I think that's one of the reasons that we're having the rise in people witnessing them. It kind of corresponds with the recovery of the population of the Native Americans at the same time. So maybe, there's a lot of old stories going back into the Indian lore about them, during the smallpox outbreaks that they would drag their young into the Indian villages looking for help, and the Indians were just as bad off as they were. So,
wow, I've not heard those stories.
Oh yeah, there's quite a few of those out there.
If they can catch coronavirus, theoretically, one should be able to go out in the woods and listen for them coughing, right? Know where they are.
You would think, but who knows with them being as healthy as they are? I don't know. I don't know that the virus would be strong enough to bring them down. Except for maybe they're old. Kind of like what happens with us most of the time, with all living organisms.
Correct. Yeah. Well, that's a side question, but I've been enjoying reading your book, Jason, and
thanks.
Writing it and getting it published. And
yeah, it was quite an ordeal. It felt good to put a lot of that down, but like I tell everybody, that's only maybe 20% of the stuff that's happened with me, as you know, having spent time with me.
Yeah, and you obviously didn't write about every single thing that's happened to you.
Oh, not even close. Not even close.
Well,
I don't even think in that book is even my wife's first encounter, which was pretty profound as well.
Well, I've not finished the book. I'm about halfway through, but I wanted to go ahead and interview you on the phone and just ask some clarifying questions. But for those who have not listened to our podcast with Jason last year, I would encourage you to go back. I don't have the exact number of that podcast, but I would encourage you to go back to last year and listen to Jason's interview. The first one, it will add more information than we can cover today, because I'm not going to try to repeat everything. But
that was a pretty remarkable trip.
It was.
That was fun.
You mentioned being frustrated by, this was early on in the book, you mentioned being frustrated by knowing everything that you know, and yet talking with people who are skeptical even after everything that you've experienced.
Oh yeah, that's something that I think anybody in my position. I'm not the only one. We've all had to come to that realization, but it's very difficult to deal with somebody. And I don't care how many letters you have behind your name, how much education you have, that doesn't make you right. And when they're sitting there telling you, that what you saw, what happened to you didn't really happen, when it's as plain as the chair I'm sitting in, that can drive you crazy. The first few years especially. It's still a never-ending source of frustration. Especially one thing that really gets me is when you tell people and they get that little smirk on their face. That just drives me crazy. I'm sure you see it in the museum a lot. Yeah, you're like, oh yeah, I would love nothing more than to take you out there and film you pooping your pants. That's what I really want to do. Because it does. It takes a lot of nerve to go out there and do what we do.
So I want to get back to something you said on that topic of skeptics and wanting to take people out and let them kind of get a taste of their own medicine. You mentioned taking a group of high school kids out, and one of the kids was really smirking and giving you a hard time. And you knew. Well, let me just let you tell the story of what happened and what you did with this kid.
It's a really funny story, and like I said, there's been many skeptics that I've taken out. Most of them are usually very polite, but at the same time, in the back of their mind, they're rolling their eyes and everything else. Then there's some that are just obnoxiously so. But anyway, this was early. I think I'd been into the subject maybe a couple years, maybe. And I've been studying reports here outside of Castle Rock where I live, and some of the historical things and talking to people. And, I was pretty open about it after my encounter with that face-to-face. After that, there's no letting go. And so I had talked to a friend of mine who owns a pretty sizable chunk of property outside of Castle Rock up here in the mountains. And it's right in the path of what I suspected being maybe an active area, maybe possibly a group of them that were migrating up and down. And actually, there's another Sasquatch investigation group that concentrated pretty heavily in that area, and I think there's still some work going on there, including a guy that lives up there that has a very large collection of foot casts that he's collected over the years on his property, usually about this time of year. But it was about this time of year, maybe a little bit early, like mid-March, and I had contacted my friend, and I talked to him. He'd been out there for a long time. Him and his wife live out there. It's pretty remote where they're at. And by standards, outside of Denver, it's a 30-acre chunk of land and bordering national forest and stuff. And I said, is there anything weird that happens at your house that maybe we can get a clue of what's going on? And this is actually around about the same time I started running game cameras after talking to witnesses just slightly up the mountain range, maybe 6 or 8 miles from his house, maybe. But anyway, and he said, yeah, it's funny. He goes, usually in the spring, my dogs, he adopts a lot of rescue dogs and stuff. He said they usually in the spring, there's always some big event. They flip out and they destroy things. He had one where one of the dogs actually jumped through a ground level window, through the glass window to hide in the basement. So, I mean, that's pretty severe. Yeah. Severe. So I was like, well, then maybe we're onto something, maybe my calculations are right. Let's check this out. And so I went up there with him and his son was in high school at the time and had a bunch of buddies that were on the football team and all this stuff. And I had previously, met with some of their friends and, showed them some of my stuff. And we had kind of a Bigfoot party several months before. And, just trying to introduce them to the subject, especially with them living out there. I mean, the things that they could be doing out there would be incredible, And so anyway, we went on a walk, and they do a lot of hiking out there. As like I said, there's a huge trail that goes you could probably walk from their house all the way to your house, Jim. I mean, on that trail. That thing goes a long ways. And so we went out there in the middle of the night. There was snow on the ground, and the boys were, there was probably 6 or 8 of them. I had a couple of game cameras that I intended to set out. And these are the old ones with the big annoying flash. They didn't have the IR flashes back then. And or at least I couldn't afford them. But we go walking down the trail, and after walking for quite a little while, there was one moment we kind of had a sliver of a moon. There was snow on a lot of the ground, and one of the boys said, I think I just saw one across the road, and in my mind, I was walking in front of them. I had seen it too, but I wasn't sure. You know, it was at a distance, so it was hard. It was dark, so it kind of confirmed. I thought, yeah, I saw that too. But I tried not to get excited. Didn't want anybody getting freaked out, and I told them not to run because my experience was when they run, they love to chase you. They really do. And to them, it becomes a game. But anyway, we ended up going out. This went on for several hours. We were out there for probably 4 hours, maybe 5 hours, hiking around, doing different things. And at one point, we got on this big rock outcropping, and I did a whoop. And I don't do this anymore, but I did do a whoop, and we started getting responses from about 5 or 6 different areas down in the valley below us, down in the trees, and you could clearly hear them communicating back and forth. And they were banging sticks and whistling and whooping and doing all this stuff. And each time they get a little closer, a little closer, a little closer. And the boys were starting to get kind of freaked out. And so I said, well, let's go ahead and head on back to the house, and then we'll just call it a night, and I'll drive home and all this stuff. So we started walking back, and, periodically one of the boys would say, oh, I think I just saw one over there running in between those trees over there, whatever. And
this is at night, right?
Yeah, this is at night. So this is probably midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, maybe something like that. It's pretty dark. We just had a sliver of moon. There was quite a bit of snow on the ground, but there were still patches, but everything's frozen solid. And where we were walking back to his house, off to my right was kind of like a sloping down kind of a ravine area that had a lot of brush and some trees and stuff down, pretty thick pine trees and oak brush down there. And I had walked out ahead of them initially, and I was trying to listen, and, boys being boys, they're chatting and, just goofing off. And I could hear this thing shadowing us down below in this ravine. And so I get out there, and I bang on a tree, and off in the distance we get a response. And this whole time, this other kid who's trying to be the tough guy, and he's a pretty big kid. He was probably 6'4", 6'5". He was like a senior in high school. I don't know, probably 300 pounds. He was a big boy. And he was trying to be the tough guy and everything else. And I knew that this thing was really close to us. And he goes, "This is so stupid." and I'm like, "Really? Your buddies?"
You're thinking, yeah, we're going to see about this.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it was. And so in my mind, I'm like, okay. So knowing that I had heard this thing down there, and it was maybe, I don't know, maybe 100 yards, maybe not even that, down into the bushes there. And there was this pine tree that was next to the side of the road that was probably, maybe 50, 60 feet off the side of the road, about halfway between us and where this thing was. Like I said, I had clearly heard it walking in the snow and, walking, busting twigs and stuff. It was really thick brush through there. And I gave him my thumper, and I said, well, go down there and hit that, see what happens. And he's like, oh, whatever. And some of his buddies who'd already seen these things were like, no, don't go down there, dude. Don't go down there. Like, he'll be fine. Just go on down there. And he goes down there, and he hits this tree. And immediately, it was a really cool response. This thing down in the bushes, it hit this I don't know if it sounded like it was hitting a tree, but it was using a big iron pipe. It was a big pipe. You could hear the metallic hit from it. And it went bang, 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 bang. And that kid threw that stick up in the air and just took off running. And I tried to stop him. There was no stopping him. I saw his headlamp ran all the way to the house, jumped in his car, and drove off. It was the last time I ever saw him.
Did you ever talk to him again after that?
No, I never have. And I don't know. I've never heard anything after that. I was just like, that was pretty cool. Well, then to make full circle of that, so, that's the only time I've ever heard one use something like a metal pipe before. Usually, they'll use like a stick or whatever. It was clearly metallic. And so this is probably would have been in 2010, 2011 was when this happened. And then last year, so I have another friend that lives up there just a few miles away from there who was a skeptic as well. He isn't anymore, but I had told him what I'd found up there and other things that I had discovered up there and talking to other researchers and witnesses up there. And he was like, well, I lived up there for years. I haven't heard anything. It would have been, can't remember if it was last spring or the spring before that. Within the last couple of years. I think it was last spring. I got a frantic call from him at about 2 a.m. and he's like, you're not going to believe this. You're not going to believe this. And I said, I don't know. What are you waking me up for? And he goes, listen to this, and he holds his phone outside the window of his 2-story house. It's out in the woods, very, very secluded, and like I said, he's very close to this guy's house. And you can clearly hear like a couple wood knocks, and then you hear like a pipe bang, bang. And then a couple more wood knocks, and then a pipe bang, bang. And this went on for probably 30 minutes. And I really think there's one up there. He probably just, I don't know, maybe it's like their Excalibur. He's walking around with a piece of drill pipe or something. I don't know. But it's clearly a pipe. Kind of interesting.
Well, you know, what that reminds me of is, just to break in for a second, is when you and I were out, and the recordings I got on my recorder, there were 3 metallic bangs that I couldn't trace to anything we were doing in the camp that would have made the same sound. And I wondered, when you wrote that about this being a metallic banging, I thought that sound, I wonder if that sounds like what Jason and I heard on that recording from Steamboat area last night.
I don't know. I'd have to
remember those
listen to that again.
Clank,
yeah, I remember hearing those, but I can't remember. Now I think about it, the ones that we recorded were not loud enough. I mean, this thing is like clearly hitting the tree as hard as he can. And, you know, and it's just a bang, bang with that metallic ringing, you know, afterwards. It sounds almost like, you know, like if somebody was to like drop a pipe on a concrete pad. That's what it sounds like, you know. But I think it's really interesting, you know, and like I said, I mentioned that in the book many times. I love, especially honest skeptics, man, they're the best. Absolutely. Please look into this. Beat it to death, you know. But I've taken many people out that were skeptical, and, you know, I've won them all over. I mean, every one of them.
Yeah.
They've got a 100% success rate with this thing. And the biggest thing then is, you know, well, now you've heard it. Now explain that away, you know, and obviously they can't, you know. But that was pretty funny. That was a fun event there. We still talk about that.
Yeah. And how many, that happened, do you think, about 2000?
We're probably around 2010. Yes. Yeah, early on. Like I said, I've been at it only a couple of years, so probably 2010, I would guess.
Yeah, that's interesting because I started my research in about 13, I think. So you got a few years on me, but it's interesting. This was outside of Castle Rock, right? You're talking about?
Yep. Yeah, it's a 25-minute drive from my house.
Okay, you talked about a number of witnesses contacting you who all, turns out, lived in the same neighborhood in very expensive homes.
Yep.
And they had all had experiences. It's the same area that we're talking about?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So geographically, if you head south from where the boy ran away, if you head south down the Front Range right there, I would say maybe 10, 15 miles directly south.
Towards Pikes Peak, or?
Yep, going towards Pikes Peak, yeah. Yep, and that would put you right out where the homeowners contacted me, which is also where I had my game camera destroyed. And I mean, when I say destroyed, that thing, whoever or whatever sat down to destroy that game camera did it with some intention, because they ground it up. I mean, a human being, I can see somebody vandalizing, smashing it with a rock, but they're not going to sit there on a rock and grind it into nothing.
Wow.
I mean,
was it at the base of my game camera.
Yeah, it was.
Found it?
So, would you like me to tell that story? I'd be glad.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah, so this is around about that same time. I had originally gotten contacted by a homeowner out there. Like I said, here in town, I'm pretty open about it. And, you know, once word circulates, you know, that there's this crazy Bigfoot guy in town, people that have encounters are dying to talk to somebody. And they're like, hey, I got to talk to this guy. I've been holding this in forever, you know. So that kind of stuff circulates, as you know, in your town. I'm sure it circulates around. People know who you are, you know, and they'll come in, hey, I think you want to know this, you know. And that's what happens to me. And so I get contacted by this guy, and it's funny, like it always starts the same way. He goes, well, you know, I know you're not going to believe this, but he goes, but about 2:30 in the morning the other day, I got up to get a drink of water and was standing in my kitchen looking over the sink out the kitchen window at the cul-de-sac. And these are really big homes. They're multi-million-dollar homes, and their trash is actually a big dumpster that's at the end of the roundabout at the end of the driveway. And there's 3 big homes there. And these people, they're because their homes are so far apart, they don't even know each other. You know, they never met each other, and you know, they're busy living their lives, being professionals, however they pay for such houses like that. You know, and so they don't have a lot of time to socialize, really. Anyway, he said he looked out the window and he said he saw this huge, hairy figure digging through his dumpster. And he goes, I just freaked out. I turned around, saw me, kind of snarled at me, kind of made a snarl face at him, and he could see it underneath the street light. And it took off and ran up into the woods. And I said, well, I'm working right now, but, you know, if you give me a week or so, as soon as I get some time off work, I'll run up there and we'll check it out. You know, by then it was a few days afterwards anyway. You're not going to find any evidence anyway.
Sure.
So, and in the meantime, within the week or so, I think it was about 10 days between the time when he called me and then I could actually go visit him. I got 2 other calls from his other 2 neighbors, and they had never met each other, didn't know each other.
Independent of one another. That's crazy.
Yeah, independent of one another, and they had all seen the same figure digging in trash at different days. And and it was really big. You know, that it was one of those big dumpsters, and they said that this thing was big enough that where it bent over, the top of its hips were level with the top of the dumpster. So I don't know, what's that, 10, 12 feet tall?
Is a dumpster diver.
Oh yeah, definitely. And so it was funny. So they didn't have any idea that any of them had contacted me. They had all found out about me through the grapevine in town. And so when I met them, I had all 3 of them there, and I told them, I said, all of you guys contacted me for the same reason, which just floored them. They couldn't believe it. You know, I said, you guys, now you met your neighbors. You know, here you are. You know, the building neighborhood. You know. And so I started running cameras up there, and I ran cameras up there for about 2 years because they gave me private access to the national forest behind their house, which has 0 human activity. It goes from there straight up to Rampart Range, which is a very wooded, extremely rugged area here in Castle Rock. I mean, some of those mountains you can barely walk up the hillside. It's so steep, and it's very muddy, and it's got a lot of, in the summertime, it has lots of raspberries, quite a few bears and mountain lions and stuff. So I started running cameras up there, and I got some pretty good wildlife photographs. I had, I think I was running 3 of the really old game cameras that took the C-size batteries, and you had to change them out every few days, and God, it was just horrible. Horrible. And they had the big annoying flash, which I think was probably what happened. And I had this one particular one that I had set up in this creek, because up there in the summertime especially, it gets dry and water's in short supply up there. And so I put it on this creek, and it also was surrounded by raspberries. So I thought this is a good place for anything to be foraging and getting water, you know. And so I put the camera up there, and it stayed there for, like I said, I don't know, a year or 2, quite a while. And then one day, well, let me back up. So I had another encounter going up there to check my cameras before that one was destroyed. I think it was probably 6 months earlier. That was in March. I had a friend of mine, and her husband and son wanted to go with me, and I said, well, I got to go check the cameras anyway. If you guys want to have an encounter, this is around about the same time that boy had gotten run off, I think.
Okay.
Somewhere around that time. I said, if you guys want to go with me, instead of going in the daytime, we'll go at night, see what we can run into. So we go up there, and it was so cold. It was like it had been 20, 30 below zero with 30-mile-an-hour wind. It was 2 or 3 in the morning. It was frigid. Everything's just frozen, absolutely solid. And we're walking up the hill, and to get in there, you have to go up this really, really steep incline. It's actually in the book. That cover, there's a picture of me wearing sunglasses and a T-shirt.
I saw that picture. That looks pretty steep.
That's exactly that. That's the head of the trail where I was walking up to get my camera. That's only maybe a third of the way. And so anyway, it's really steep, and we're walking up there, and it gets on this old trail, kind of a Jeep trail from, God, I don't know, back in the 30s or 40s. It's pretty old. And we're walking on this trail, and I'm in front, and the other 2 guys are behind me. And this is the only time I've ever seen, like, the legendary red eye shine that everybody talks about. And all the times I've seen that, I've seen the green eye shine once, like greenish yellow. But I saw 3, clear as day, 3 sets of eyes that looked like red LED flashlights. They were that bright, and we didn't have any flashlights. If people say that it's reflection, it is not. They self-generate that. I don't know how. It clearly was there. And I stopped for a second, and I looked at them, and the 3 of them looked at me, and then they turned to their left and ran across the road in front of me. And we're talking maybe 30 yards, 40 yards in front of me.
And I didn't say eyes were shining. All three sets of eyes.
Yeah, all three eyes were shining, and I mean they were bright. You couldn't miss them.
Wow.
And I didn't say anything because I number one, I wasn't sure that I had seen that, and I didn't want to lead the other guys into thinking something. So I stopped for a second, and I saw it run across, and then I took one more step, and my friend's son was standing behind me. He goes, wait. He goes, didn't you see those eyes up there? And I said, I did, but I didn't want to freak you guys, and I didn't want to, I didn't want to lead him into a question, So we all three had seen those eyes, and the ground was frozen so solid. We looked for tracks. There was nothing. I mean, you could have drove a bulldozer back there, and it wouldn't have broke the ground. I mean, it was like concrete.
Wow.
And they ran off down the steep ravine down in the bushes, and the ravine went up into a notch that we were walking towards, which is where my camera was. And it's surrounded by big boulders, really thick trees, pine trees, and oak brush, and that kind of stuff. And we started walking, and keep in mind, everything is frozen solid. Yeah, the wind's blowing, but I mean, nothing's going to move. When things are frozen that solid, you can't get anything to move.
Right.
And right at the perfect time, while we were looking at those tracks, those three things pushed a gigantic boulder down that ravine. I mean, like a car-sized boulder down the ravine in the middle of the night. That kind of stuff. You would expect yeah, it was huge.
That must have made quite a booming sound as it came down the side.
It did. And the guys were looking at me, and they were kind of getting freaked out. And I said, "You got your gun, right?" And I said, "Oh, always." I'm not coming up there with that.
Exactly.
Crazy, And so like I said, you would expect a boulder like that to get knocked down, when things are warming up and thawing out. That's normal. But when it's frozen solid, no, that's not going to happen. But anyway, so we continued on up, and we didn't see anything else the rest of the night. Anyway, so you fast forward, several months, because I want to say it was in July when I found my destroyed camera. And I go back up there, and it was, again, the same spot, and was walking in there, and I go to check my camera, and it's gone. It's not on the tree anymore. And I know that there isn't any human activity up there. I've been going up there for a couple of years and hadn't seen anybody.
And how high up the tree would you have said you had put it?
I had put that one was probably at about 6 feet in the air.
Okay.
And it was because of the berry bushes. I actually had sticks behind it, so it was aimed down at the water down below it, because it was probably 10 or 15 feet up from the river or from the stream. And so it was up in the air, and it was missing. And the first thing I thought was vandals had taken it, or, who knows.
Right.
And so I started doing a big circle. I just started doing circles around this tree trying to find it. I got about 150 feet away from where the tree was. Up on the side of the mountain, there was this big flat rock, and I find what's left of my game camera. And I mean, they had put it on this flat rock, and they had smashed it, and then they had ground it up like ground corn. I mean, that was just ground up into nothing. The biggest piece I found in my game camera was about the size of my pinky nail. I mean, it took some time. I can see a human being smashing it with a rock and leaving it, but not doing that thorough of a job. So the only thing I can imagine is that one of them walked by, that flash blasted him in the face, ticked him off, and he did a job on it, I don't know. Can you still hear me? Hello?
Sorry, I had muted my mic for a second.
Okay.
That's one of the reasons why I've only very seldom put out cameras. I don't want to get them smashed. And
yeah,
they know where they are. Even our infrared cameras, they see them.
They do. The only time that I've ever gotten anything good on the camera, and I ran them religiously for years. And now I did get some really cool wildlife pictures.
Right.
But the only thing I ever got on the game camera was in that episode, in that chapter in the book. I don't know if you've gotten to that part yet, where I first met Elvis. The night that I met Elvis.
No, I haven't. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. When you get to that one, that night I had the camera set on the picnic table with the ketchup and mustard and all the other human items, and I had it aimed at the tent. It did key off. It was when the flash went off. It was so far away, it didn't really pick up the tent or anything. But I did get 2 sets of glowing eyes standing over what I know was the tent. I have pictures of those, of the glowing eyes. Then that's like greenish yellow eyes. And then, and I got three or four photographs. They were blurry photographs from that incident where it put its hand in front of the camera, moved its fingers back and forth in front, making the flash go off, and then it laid the camera down on its face.
Huh.
And I found it with the camera face down. And then that was also the same night that finger poke in the trash bag that's in your museum came out. That same incident. But that one, and then the incident where I took my neighbor on his first trip, which would have been in 2009, and I had the same camera on the ground. I had learned from my previous experiments not to put them in the trees. I started putting them on the ground, and I had, when we set our camp, I put the camera on the ground, trying to estimate where the tent was going to be, because as soon as I got out of the car, I turned the camera on, put it on the ground, and put my hat over it so the flash wasn't going off as we were setting up camp and everything. And we set the tent up, and then we had all that other stuff. This is in the book, but had a lot of that other stuff. And then the next morning, it came running down the fire lane and hit my neighbor in the face, and I got a picture of its left ankle, like 5:30 in the morning. Sun was up, and no, I did not. I did not actually save that picture. It's really blurry, and skeptics would have been like, "Oh, that's not perfect enough," And honestly, back then, I write about it in the book. I didn't expect to write a book, and I was tired of trying to convince people. I was just going out there for my own knowledge, really. The only thing I do regret is that I didn't have the camera turned a little bit more to the right and tilted a little bit more up, because I would have got a perfect frontal shot. Perfect. Would have been daytime frontal shot.
Of course,
10 feet away.
Hindsight and cooperating are two.
It's so aggravating.
Very different things.
I still try to set my cameras out, but I don't set them out around the camp too much. I tried everything. I put cameras in coolers. I put them in containers. The next thing I want to do is if I can get a good enough camera, I have my big 30-foot RV that I use for archery hunting and stuff, and it's got a big bay window in the kitchen, and I would love to put a camera on a tripod and just aim it out there and just turn it on and just leave it on. And then I think we might catch something, if you walk in front of.
If you figure that out, let me know.
You'll be the first one I show. If I manage to get it to work. God knows I've tried everything else.
I got two other quick questions here. One was the story you told about the couple who were camped up in, I think it was in the area where Grumpy is, but they were sleeping in the back of their pickup and next to a river.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's an amazing place. I'm actually trying to push Dennis to do a little bit more investigating up there with me this summer. And of course, we'd love to have you come along.
Yeah,
but
business, right?
yeah, you'll run it. Yeah, but anyway, there's a lot of stories coming out of there, including a very good, close personal friend of mine from high school who never told me about an encounter that happened very close to where this woman and her husband had their encounter. And he didn't tell me until last year about something that happened up there, which I'll be glad to tell you that too. But the story between the husband and the wife, so this is it's one of my favorite places. I go up there. I've gone up there my entire life. I just love it up there. It's a great place. One of the best places in the state, really. But it's got a couple of pretty good-sized rivers that come together in the head of the reservoir, and then they dump in and make a big reservoir. And in the head of the reservoir there, that's where most of the camping is, and it's got a lot of pretty frequented campsites. My wife and I actually went up there last 4th of July for like a week. There's a lot of human activity in those areas. A lot of people ATV and whatnot. This is their occurrence, I believe, happened before ATVing was really a big deal. I think theirs happened in the early 1980s, I think. But anyway, they were camping in the back. Her and her husband, her ex-husband, were in the back of a pickup truck, and they were camping. And this area has a lot of bears. I've had numerous bear encounters up there and a couple mountain lion encounters, but bears especially, they'll come right up to your tent. But they were sleeping in the back of the truck, and they had a little 380 pistol in case a bear came along, just to scare them off. Not like that. That's going to protect you. Just a little pop bang to run them off is about all you can do. And not myself, I prefer a 12 gauge. But anyway,
Yeah.
they were sleeping in a mattress in the back of the truck. And it was a full moon night, and they heard something splashing across the river or near the truck. And they thought that, you know, they were expecting to see a bear or something when they peeked up, and they wanted to make sure if there was a threat coming, you know, that they could deal with it. Well, they peeked up, and then instead of seeing a bear, they saw this huge grayish white figure, Sasquatch, crossing the river. And of course, it scared them to death because the thing's only 50 feet away. And so they laid down in the bed and tried to pretend like they were sleeping. And the next thing you know, it walked right up on them and put its hands on the back of the pickup bed and leaned over and looked at them. And then let go of the pickup bed.
Did they have their eyes
off.
open a little bit so they could see it?
Oh yeah, they both got a good look at it. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And you said in the book that the bed of the truck only came up to its groin?
I don't even think of it. I think the groin was probably above the bed of the truck.
So I would imagine, Jason, what it must have been like for them with this thing standing over the truck while they're lying in there. I mean, it could have reached in and grabbed them and pulled them out. I mean, it could have done anything.
It would have been, it would have been terrifying, you know. But you know, like I say all the time, though, we're just lucky that they have the temperament that they do. I think that they do things like that all the time. It's just out of curiosity. I don't think he ever intended to hurt any of them. He just wanted to know what they were doing.
And we're usually asleep, so we don't know.
Exactly. I mean, I shudder to even imagine how many times I've missed them. You know?
Yeah, I know.
It's a whole bunch, man. I don't know, you know, but it's like I was saying before, though, that, you know, it's that whole area there. There's just story after story when I start talking to people and the locals start learning. You know, like I said, I grew up there, so people they kind of seek me out, and when something happens or they have a story, you know, once they hear about it, like I want to talk to you about this, you know, and
which
like
goes to show, Jason, that we get the same thing at the Sasquatch Outpost, and I'm convinced. I don't know what you think. I'm convinced that we hear probably 1/10 of all the stories, maybe even less than that, a 20th or 30th of all the stories that are out there.
Yep.
And so, and we think we hear a lot. Skeptics have no clue how many people are encountering Sasquatch in this state.
They don't. And then it's funny when, you know, this is kind of a little bit off topic, but since you brought that up, I went to a dinner party here a while back that was a lot of fun, and there was a lot of pretty high-ranking retired military people there. And, you know, and the guy who invited me there is a good friend of mine, and they wanted me to talk to people about this strange obsession that I have. And so I did. And, you know, so half the party was going on. The other half of the party was kind of huddled around me in the living room, and we're talking about all this stuff. And, of course, there's a lot of people that are rolling their eyes, and they're thinking I'm crazy, you know, the usual stuff. But then all of a sudden, so I pulled up a recording because I was telling them, they said, well, what kind of noises do they make? And I said, well, I have lots of stuff, but I don't have it with me. So I just pulled up some of Ron Moorhead's recordings. And, you know, more of like the samurai chatter along with like the, you know, the snarling noises that they make and the weird whistles and all that stuff. And there's this guy that was there. He was, like I said, he was a very high ranking officer. I'd say he was 2 or 3 star general of some sort. And he was standing there and he was listening intently to the whole conversation, and his wife was not even paying attention. She wasn't even part of the conversation. She was off kind of to the kitchen side, and she heard those recordings, and she whipped her head around and she goes, "Oh my God!" And his mouth just kind of opened, and he's like, "We heard those same exact noises last year while we were camping up by the Air Force Academy." And I said, "Yep, you got squashed and didn't even know it." You know, and they heard it from 5 or 6 different directions, right next to their tent. And so they said, "Yep, welcome to my world." Now I just tell all the rest of these people so they can laugh at you and tell you you're crazy.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
you know. But it was so funny because she instantly started paying attention, because once she heard that, she knew that I was the real deal and I was serious about this. You know.
But up until then, she didn't know what those noises were.
No. They're like, "Oh, there's just pigs running around the Air Force Academy." Well, there aren't any pigs in Colorado. We don't.
No, we don't have any,
you know,
no wild boar here. I mean, it's
no. You know, so we had that. And then, like I said, going back to the reservoir, you know, I had a good friend of mine from high school that I'm hoping he'll go out with us on a trip and you'll get to meet him. Super great guy. I've known him for years. But anyway, he never told me, but they were up there, and just a long story short of it, without getting too much detail, they ended up having one of the guys had an encounter with a Sasquatch maybe 200-300 yards away from where the woman and her husband had their truck parked with their encounter, and they were playing hide and seek in the dark, and he lay down in a depression, and another person ran up and lay down in the depression next to him, and he thought that he was part of the hide and seek game, but then the guy jumped up and ran off the other way. And he was afraid he was going to give away his position, and then all of a sudden he realized that guy wasn't part of their group. And he was like, wait a second. And he ran back and started counting everybody. He's like, there's somebody running around in the woods. You know, it's not us, you know. And then about a half a mile down from where they were at, maybe 3/4 of a mile, is where my wife and I heard this just incredible vocalization. I mean, it sounded like, and this is in the book, but it sounded just like monkeys at the zoo. I mean, they were probably 15 or 20 of them, and they were just going off. It sounded like there was a zoo just out in the middle of the mountains. It was just bizarre. And then
so he thinks the Sasquatch ran up and jumped down in the ditch with him.
Yeah,
and then
it was like joining in the game.
Away.
Yeah, it was like a juvenile. He said it was about 7 feet tall. Yeah, he said at first he thought it was just a person. It was dark. He couldn't tell. He said he laid down on his stomach in the depression next to him, and they were spying on the camp. And then they got bored, and it stood up and just walked away. And
boy, if he had just turned,
he's
and
like,
looked
"Wait a minute,
at
it's going the wrong way," you know.
If he had just turned and looked at it, that would have been.
I don't think he would have seen it. He said it was so dark. He just saw this big figure that came up really quietly. He thought he was part of the game, and he laid down in the ditch right next to him, and they just laid there watching the fire for a little bit. Isn't that weird?
That is weird. Well, that just again shows their temperament. That much of the time they just want to have fun, and it's crazy that one would even join in a game like that.
Oh yeah, well he does it on his own probably all summer long, you know.
Yeah, that's right.
He's like, "Oh, they're playing my game. I know how to play this," you know.
He's a hide and seek champion of the world. So
that's right. Yeah.
Or in our current environment, the social distancing champion of the world.
Yes, I think he's way ahead of his time on all these.
Oh yeah, way. Hey, I have one other question.
Sure.
This episode. In the last month, I've gotten two people have contacted me. One was the guy David Bacar, who owns the museum in Georgia, contacted me. And,
oh, cool.
About a guy that he had read about online, who had a sighting apparently here in Bailey, where this thing walked up, looked in the window of his kitchen, and he filmed it for like 8 minutes, and he had several photos he'd shared on Facebook, and the second was Kenny, my buddy Kenny, sent me a photo that someone had just sent him that was taken near Bailey. Unfortunately, both cases, I believe, turned out to be hoaxes. And the one that was sent to me yesterday, Kenny sent it to me, and it looked really intriguing. And the guy said he had taken it 3 days ago outside of Bailey. And I started looking at the picture more closely, and every tree in the picture was a hardwood, and there were leaves on the ground. And I wrote back, and I said, "Yeah, that's not Colorado, and not anywhere around here anyway." And he looked at the picture as well, and thought, he wrote back and said, "Yeah, I'm afraid we've been hoaxed, or I've been hoaxed." Yep. How many times have you had that happen to you, where people have sent you bogus stuff?
I haven't. Usually when I get them, it's usually very emotional. And I don't think anyone has ever given me any photographs. It's always been just a personal story,
right?
And they're like, I want to know, are my kids safe to play in the yard? Can we go out and do all this stuff? I myself have not been hoaxed at all. I know what you're talking about, those photographs, because you and I have discussed that. They look really impressive, and I got to hand it to you, man. You and Dave and those guys, you guys did a great job of sniffing that out. So good job on that, because it's just from the outside pictures, it looks pretty good. It
looks good, and I don't know what he used as a prop for that. It's the best Bigfoot prop I've ever seen.
That's a pretty good one for sure, you know, and it, like I said, I haven't because I don't run a museum and I'm not like an official investigative,
Right.
you know, entity. And I do a lot of stuff just on the periphery with Dennis and Mark and all those guys.
Right.
You know, but really, most of my stuff are just local people that usually come to me. You know, they're like, we just saw this thing. Can you come check it out? And we go, we look for tracks or whatever, which, I can't remember. Usually I'm a couple of weeks after they've seen it. And so I've never really recovered any tracks from a sighting like that myself. I got really close this year, and I had a guy that found tracks up here in Rampart Range, and then one of those blizzards came in and covered it up before I could even get up there.
Yeah.
I had about a 6-hour notice, you know. But yeah, no, I haven't really myself. I haven't fallen prey to any of those, but they're definitely out there. And as you know, that's just the dangers of this kind of work, because it's hard because some of them are really good. You know,
and it's a bit depressing for me just because they get you so hyped up, and I get excited and I think, wow, we're really going to run something here, and then I realize, no, this is another one. I had one happen 2 months ago. I drove all the way up to Loveland, and this guy sat me down at his kitchen table, and he thought it was real, and showed me the picture that his son had apparently taken, and I look at the picture, and it's a cutout of Bigfoot in somebody's yard. And this guy was convinced it was real, and all I can figure is that his son is actually lying to him, which is really sad. And this fellow's in his 80s, and
that's really really
what a crazy world we live in.
Yeah,
people will do this kind of stuff over and over and over. So
now, one of the things that I do get, which is I don't know if they've told you this, there is somebody has a very impressive metal cutout of one, like a silhouette that's on the highway up by Woodland Park. It's off the side of the road, and it's back in the trees. I have had so many people say, I just saw this thing. I said, let me guess. It's like 2 miles from Florissant. They're like, yeah. I'm like, that is a cutout. And they usually go back, sure enough, yep, I'm staring at it right now. You know, but
they're looking at it as they drive by, right?
Yeah, you know, so it's not intentional, but it's just funny that kind of thing can generate it. But at the same time, I mean, deep down inside, I'll be honest with you, you know, when you're driving across the plains out by Hartselle, by 11 Mile on Antero Reservoir.
Yes.
You know, when you're going out there in the open, there's those old log cabins out there. I have, for the longest time, have always threatened that if I had enough money to buy that land, I would take a mannequin and spray paint it black so it looked like a black figure and stand it in the doorway just to see what. It's just kind of I don't know. It's just human nature, man. I don't know. It would be pretty fun.
Well, last story here, I don't have time, but there was somebody that put a figure out on the highway outside of Bailey years ago. This is probably 5-6 years ago, and it was a cutout, a wooden cutout that had some supports behind it, and people were driving along. It was almost causing accidents. People were driving along and slamming on their brakes, and so finally, I'd heard about it. People had told me about it, but I hadn't actually seen it myself. So CDOT pulls up one day, comes to the door, and they say, we brought you Bigfoot. I said, what are you talking about? And I walk outside, and here's this big plywood cutout. I said, it's not my Bigfoot. They said, well, it is now. We're not going to leave it on the hallway. So they brought it and left it at my store. And, you know, because they're real picky about anything on the side of the highway. So,
sure.
It was funny that thing sat outside my store for a long time until it just decomposed because it was just regular, wasn't even plywood, it was chipboard, and it quickly a couple of rains and it was gone. But that just shows again how much interest there is in this topic around the country.
Sure.
Hey,
it just grabs you, you know.
It does. How's your book doing? Let me just give the title of your book again. It's
Sure.
True Ongoing Stories of Sasquatch in the Colorado Rockies, for our listeners who haven't read it yet, by Jason Frank. How's it selling?
You know, I don't know how the online sales are going because I won't have that information from the publisher until July. They only notify me twice a year, January and July. To my knowledge, it's going pretty well. I'm running into people just randomly that recognize me from the book, which is kind of interesting. The book signing that I had just before the pandemic started, which was March 14th, which I was really hoping you guys could go, but I know Daphne has thing going on. So, but we'll definitely do another one of those at your museum. That was actually, considering it was, at the dawn of the end of time, was actually very successful. We had a couple hundred people that showed up. I think I haven't done the official count yet, but I think I sold about 130 books, I think.
That's fantastic.
It is, considering all the stuff that was going on, and some people couldn't make it.
Right.
The thing that really thrilled me, because we held it in a brewery here in Castle Rock. And, of course, as you know, the people in the Bigfoot community, they're all awesome. I love all you guys. You're just fantastic friends, and they support you, and that's just awesome. And a lot of them were there, which was kind of cool. And that's what I was telling a lot of my people that were showing up. I said, a lot of the people that are in the book are here in this crowd. And we had a little identifier. It was fun. Since it was just before St. Patrick's Day, people who were voluntary or wanting to talk about their encounters, I had them put on St. Patrick's beads that I had supplied. I said, if you've had an encounter and you're willing to talk about it, wear this necklace. And then everybody in this brewery, if they want to ask you, they'll ask you, And that was actually a big success. It was amazing to see how many people that were not even affiliated with the book signing that were just there for a weekend, meal and, have a couple beers. The next thing you know, they were mingling with all the Squatcher people, and they were getting their amazing stories. And the next thing you know, they were buying books and asking questions. And I think I probably heard from at least 20 or 30 people that had zero interest in Sasquatch whatsoever until that day. And then they were like,
wow.
This is really interesting. I said, that's why we're all here. This thing will grab you. Ain't going to let go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a good thing.
Fantastic. That's fantastic.
So that was, for me, that was the high point of the whole thing. And I'm really looking forward to doing a signing there at your museum as soon as this thing blows over and gets back to normal.
Amen. Well, let's just say that shows the interest in topic, and it shows that your book is going to sell well. So I'm all for it, Jason. I'm your biggest fan, and I think
I appreciate it, Jim. Thank you so much. And
I'm really hoping it'll do well.
One of the things I wanted to tell you, even with the hoaxing thing, the reason they're hoaxing you is because they know that you carry and you're a source to go to, and they're just testing you, I think. But the other thing to keep in mind, and it's frustrating. The other thing to keep in mind, though, is that, like with all my reports, most of the stuff, the people that I talk to one-on-one, what I'm looking for is patterns. What time of year is this happening? What are you doing? Right. And that's, to me, that's the gold. That's the research gold. I mean, the photograph is all fine and dandy, but if you can really pin down what they're doing, where they're going, so that you can be there at the right time to really document and experience something, I think that is the ultimate goal for everything that we do.
Yeah, for sure. Because that's helping us in our research at the end of the day. So
it is, but what really helped us the most would be getting Josh out in the woods with us.
Yeah, there you go. He's not. He's a silent partner in this particular interview. So we will get him out.
Yeah.
I'm hoping this summer we can take him on one of our
That sounds great.
So
you can count me in. Like I said, we're gonna be exploring some new areas with Dennis too. So we're gonna I'm gonna be going out, which is always a little bit of a nail biting thing. I'm always nervous. Like I told my dad, I'm always nervous when I meet a new group because you don't know how they're going to behave, and it can be dangerous.
Yes.
It's like it's one thing to go see the ones where I took you that I'm friends with, and I feel like I have a relationship and I can trust them. And there's another thing to go to a new one, and you're like, how are they gonna respond to this? That's a little freaky. But
might be better to go
part
with
of the fun.
Experienced people to a new place.
Exactly, and that brings me to our thing. We're going to be doing that in August too, so I'm looking forward to that. So definitely.
Yep. Let's hope all these things will happen. That this COVID thing blows over, and we can get back to life as normal.
That sounds great. Thank you for talking to me, and
thank you,
I hope
Jason.
everybody enjoys the book. Thanks for supporting me, guys. And like I said, as soon as this blows over, man, your place is the first one I'm going to.
Thank you very much.
Take care, Jim.
Talk
Thank
to
you.
next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, that was really cool. I mean, he had a lot of stories to share with us this time.
Yeah, and that was only up to halfway through his book. I can only imagine this book. It's a fantastic book. I really encourage our listeners to get a copy. It's got lots of very interesting photography in it, and Jason is. All I can say is Jason. There seems to be people that draw Sasquatch to themselves, and Jason just seems to be one of these people. Wherever he goes, he seems to have encounters, and I think, honestly, Jason has had more encounters than anyone I've ever met. And I've met a lot of people who've had encounters. To my knowledge, no one's had more than Jason. So he's a great resource, a great authority on this topic, and I really appreciate him coming on and giving us some more of his stories.
Yeah, and you can tell him for sure, I am there. I will go out with you guys this summer, and we'll see what's up. I'll bring all the gear.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
That will be a great episode after that trip.
Yeah, or even during that trip. We'll just bring the Tascam.
During that trip. Hey, there you go. That's a great idea. We could do a podcast from the experience.
Yeah, man. We can make that happen for sure. So what do you guys got going on at the Outpost while this is going on?
Well, while this is going on, we shut down about a week and a half ago, really before the governor of Colorado shut us down. We just felt like, we don't want to be open and give people a reason to come in the store and then someone gets infected. I would hate to have that on my conscience. So we shut down, but we've got the online store going, and that hasn't stopped. So they can go to SasquatchOutpost.com and shop online. And we've got a sticker that we've been selling. It shows it's a drawing I made of Bigfoot punching the virus. And it says Bigfoot versus COVID-19. And so
I really like it. It's such a cool sticker, man.
Yeah.
And, you did a good job
on
that.
We're selling, I made a sticker out of it, and we're selling them. And we're donating the proceeds to a couple of groups. The World Health Organization is one, and then our local food bank, we're going to donate some of the funds to the local guys as well. So that's been selling really well. I think we sold 60 of those, and got some more printed on the way. So if any of our listeners are tuning in, if we're not out of the woods by the time this podcast is broadcast, then get online and check out the Bigfoot versus virus sticker.
Yeah, and guys, stay home, stay safe. That's really important this time.
It sure is.
Listen to your officials. Just stay safe for us. We'll keep broadcasting in this weird time.
Yes, we will. We'll have at least one more. Let's hope it's only one more broadcast during this time.
Yeah, man.
I'm
would
hoping
love to
it's
see
all
you back
over
in the
before that. Yeah.
Well, all right,
well,
guys.
Hey, Josh, it's been great having you, being with you again.
Yeah.
Remotely.
And to everybody out there, please, like always, find us anywhere on social. Our podcast is on all the major platforms, so go ahead and sub for us there. And until next time, stay safe. And always remember,
you don't know Squatch.
I will soon. If we go out this summer,
I'm
sure I will.
You will.
All right, dude.
I guarantee it. Thanks, buddy.
Later.
Talk to you soon.